So my name is Terence Nicholson. That's what my mother told me, and and I make things. I'm an artist of a few different interests: music, martial arts, art objects. At least that's how it's played out so far. And I'm here to talk about my work with one of my favorite people, Paige Muller. She and I have done podcasts in Anacostia where we've interviewed artists and musicians who have deep roots in DC to sort of see how those conversations could be like a spider web, and like this person knew that person from this scene and that person knew, and we used to call that series The Pocket, right? Mm-hmm. And then before that, I don't know how she's not deaf, but she would come to see, I have a rock band called Phalo Blue. We play, I bill it as loud rock music from DC, and she would come to the shows with no earplugs. Did you have earplugs?
Nope.
Oh. And so over the years we got tight, and I couldn't think of anybody that I trust and value more in a space like this than Paige, and she agreed to ask me some questions about the work that's here, and I guess some other questions, and here we are, and I just want to say, so I don't forget later, how grateful I am for you guys all being here. Some of you I may just met today, and people who I know on a really beautiful sunny Saturday like this to take a couple minutes and come see little old me. It's really, it does a lot for me, and it really truly does a lot in terms of like when I leave this space and go back to my studio and work. It makes it feel worthwhile. So thank you so much for that. Well, that's all I got. I'm maybe get through this thing and not get choked, depending on the question. Depending on the question, I don't know.
Yeah, I promise these are not gotcha questions.
Good.
And since some of you, do know him, feel free to chime in. I will try to leave room at the end if you have questions about anything we've talked about or any of his artwork that's here or any of his past shows. But yeah, I've had the great honor of knowing Terence. I don't even know how long at this point.
I think maybe 2016, 17.
17?
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, and I first met him, as a musician. And I didn't know about his artwork. I didn't know about his deep love and practice of martial arts. So it's been kind of a reveal throughout the years, and I've gotten to know these different sides of him. But we've never really talked about his art as a practice. I've come to his shows. I love his work. So I'm really grateful that I get a chance to ask you some of these questions. And I want to start with, we went through this great exercise, and I know you've been practicing and teaching martial arts for 30 odd years, and he's actually a champion as well. But I'm curious, how does that practice influence and inform your artistic practice?
Well, my first Kung Fu teacher, who's in Chinatown, Master C.C. Liu, they call him Kung Fu Liu. He's 89 now. He didn't talk to me for a year and a half. My first year and a half of training, he didn't say any. He said two things to me. One was, it take time. Like I would come downstairs or come, after practice, and I'd bow to him, and he'd just be like, take time. He didn't even teach me directly. My older Kung Fu brother taught me. And then he told me to keep my back straight because my posture wasn't good. And after about a year and a half, I understood why he didn't talk to me for a year and a half, because he wanted to see if I was serious. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was, the idea was this wasn't going to be like what I saw in movies. It was going to be, here's a skill, and he'd say practice it 10,000 times until you know it, and then don't think about it, like stay empty. He would say stay empty, mm-hmm. Right? And it took a while for me to figure, what do you mean stay empty? And so the idea of repetition kind of got ingrained in me early. And the idea about my idea about time, and not not like clock time. I'm just talking about, I guess, eternity time, like, you know, time this way and this way and this way, all this time. It changes my sensibility about what time is. So if he taught me a skill, and then in about 7 years, like the skill becomes where I don't have to think about it, that has sort of begun to fuse into my work in terms of my idea about, like, if I'm making a thing, I'm not concerned about like how fast I can make it. If I'm coming across a certain skill in terms of like the how-to of making a thing, I'm not as worried about, like, I gotta learn this. I gotta like the process of not, like, in other words, like, suck at it, and then suck a little less and a little less, and then you get better and better and better. Like, so I'm not afraid of sucking at a thing.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. I used to be because of what do you think of me if I don't nail it in the first go. So the idea of trial and error, the idea of falling, the idea of, you know, I would do something a bunch of times and wonder why, like, when I would, you know, throw a punch this way and swing my hand that way, why my ankles felt funny. And then one day I thought he wasn't paying attention, and he walked up to me and he just turned my foot. He was like, yeah, that's not, your hand's not doing this right because your foot isn't opening. You got to open your foot. And then I was like, so you mean, like, for the last 3 months I've been doing it this way? And he's like, yeah, you got to open your foot. And so it's like, so the idea of starting a thing at the level that I'm at, and building this, it's kung fu, really. I mean, whether if we were out here and I had like and my thing was like really making nice gardens. Okay, well, that's still kung fu, because it's skill that's acquired. Kung fu means skill that's acquired with work over time. So that's what that means. It's like, you do this thing, do it over time, and your skill gets better. So when I'm at a tournament, I was at a tournament a couple of weeks ago, and I'm looking at, I'm judging tournaments. I'm watching students do their thing, and they got a staff or a sword, and they're doing it, and some of them look so good. And then you can look and you can say, okay, like, this person has been working at this skill over time, and the reason why I know that is because I'm not looking at their hands, I'm looking at their feet. I'm watching their feet. Their feet aren't stable. Their feet are all over the place. Their hands are looking beautiful, but their feet are like, man, look at those feet, And so it's like, so when I'm at the studio, it's kind of like, I'm making something, I'm working on my footwork. I'm working on my, I don't have to be a wild man with the drill. Like, if I'm listening to the drill and I'm listening to the material, it's saying, like, go at this speed. Okay, you got that? Good. Now do it a bunch of more times, so you get, so. Did that answer the question?
It did.
All right.
I mean, and I want to touch on, you mentioned, you don't have to be a wild man. I think that that's an interesting word, because, again, I met you as a musician. You had dreads, it was loud, it was headbanging, and it's a much different energy than I sort of encounter in your artwork. Seeing you on stage versus seeing you in your studio, it's an entirely different vibe. But your work, as you guys can see on the wall, it has elements of performance. There's elements of martial arts. There's elements of, chaotic energy, but also quiet. So are these sort of principles or themes that you intentionally try to infuse your artwork with?
No, I think it's, well, we just got finished doing Qigong, and so we're talking, I guess if I think about it that way, it's like yin and yang energy. Like, I mean, like the stuff with the band, like it's got to come out somewhere, you know what I mean? And so, like, I know that there's an aspect of who I am that is noisy. Like when, I mean, but the thing is, after what you might not know is after those loud punk shows, I listen to classical music on the way home. Like I just listen to like the softest, easiest thing when I'm usually driving home, or Ella Fitzgerald or Sarah Vaughan or Miles. Like I think that in nature, you have in nature, like you have animals that may be. What comes to mind is this. You like say take like a porcupine. That's a good example. Okay. Porcupine in general seems to just kind of go about it. Porcupine is not really looking for trouble, right? He's just kind of doing his things. He's got an interesting little sound when he eats. Have you ever seen YouTube clips of porcupines when they eat? They make a sweet little noise, but it's a porcupine. So if if they're met with a certain energy, well, everybody will know that you've been messing with a porcupine, because stuff poking out, quills all sticking out here, and they're just kind of like, well, I was scared, the things came out, right? I think that when it comes to like how I've been expressing myself lately, I think that what happens is that I get I'm affected by my surroundings, about the things that happen, about my family, about I'm I'm not a piece of wood. I'm affected by stuff, but then then it comes out. Like it's like call and response, right? So then it comes out. So it might come out it might end up coming out in a song, or it might end up coming out in an object. I can't think of many art products that I've made where I've said like, I want to make this thing because I want to say this, like, or I want to write this song for the club, like, or I want to make this piece because Black Lives Matter, and I'm going to make this piece to show black, like that's just not how that's just not how I operate. What seems to happen is I'm in my workspace with materials, or I'm doodling or something like that, and I start drawing something out, and then whatever it is, if it's carrying me, if it's pulling me down the road to like, keep on making me or whatever, I'll keep on making it. And then I'll maybe be writing notes about, this thing. And then, and maybe I might get all the way to where it's done, and it'd be like, well, damn, well, that's how I felt about that thing. Like, I guess that's how I felt about that. Or, or maybe I said, usually when it comes with the band and stuff, like I'm usually nervous when we're about to perform, and I tend to crack jokes, but the jokes end up being like how I really feel about a thing, right? But it starts to coming out sideways, So then that's why I usually just shut up and play. Like, let's just play the song, or I'll tell my guitar player, like, I'll tell Daryl, like, talk to the crowd before I piss somebody off or I said something, and I'll just play, But I just kind of I'm like that whole thing that Shifu told me about staying empty. Practice the things, practice the skills. But by staying empty, I think what he means is when we're empty, that's when we're the most useful, right? The Tao Te Ching talks about like that doorway that's cut out here. Like they made an interesting way how they made these doorways, and that's nice. But what makes the doorways useful is the emptiness, is what's not there. We can't get in there if it wasn't an empty space. Right, or like or a window. No matter how ornate you make the window, the window isn't of any use without, it's the emptiness that makes it useful. So I'm saying, like, when Shifu says, tells me to like stay empty, is, you know, it's like learn your skills and stuff like that, but stay empty, stay with a window. You can, air can come in, or you can throw hot water, hopefully not on nobody, throw it out, you know. So it's like it's a channel, right? So I think what I'm trying to, I think how I'm trying to steer my situation is in a way where I can just try to just stay empty. Like, I feel like, because there's pieces that I've worked on, there's songs I've tried to write where I've been so too full of myself that I can't write them. Mm-hmm. I've been too full of my, you know. One of the songs that people seem to like most is this song I wrote about a breakup. And that was a horrible, I felt horrible when I wrote that song. Like, that song, I felt horrible. But people like, we love that song. I was like, yeah, well, sure you like, you know, I mean, I woke up and I was a mess and I wrote this. It was like everything came, all the elements was there because I wasn't feeling so hot. And then there's pieces that happen, like this piece here, Home of No Return. Like, I started on that, yeah. My father died last September, and I started making that the day after he passed. But because I had not seen him in 48 years, and we had only had contact when I was 8, I'm about to be 57. And somebody called me and they got in touch with me 3 days before he died. So like the day before he died, I was on Zoom with him. He was in hospice. He wasn't even communicative in South Carolina somewhere. And I let him off the hook. I made my peace, you know. And then I got the call the next day that he passed. And I started working on sketches, which was really, my mental energy was directed on him because it was just, but what it turned into actually was more about my mother. That's what it ends up being about. Really, it's about my mom. Yeah, Home of No Return. Yeah. And so I think that if I can just try to be open to the sort of natural bends in the road instead of trying to like make my own bend in the road, like maybe that gets to the song that's supposed to be sung versus the song I think I need to sing.
Yeah, and since you mentioned that piece, I actually wanted to ask you about this one here. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to come see this one. I got to see this when you were working on it in your studio in like December, I think.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and you would, kind of talked about what your intention was behind it, and he was describing it to me, but I'm not an artistic person, so I'm like, that sounds great. Like, that makes no sense to me. So seeing this finished piece, and trying to reconcile with how you were describing it and feeling about it, was this piece something that you like knew from the jump that you wanted to create, or was this another one of like, I found this piece of wood, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, I'm just gonna let whatever come, and this was the result?
I went to this guy's house to buy some bowling balls because I had this idea of this piece that I was going to do with this bowling ball. I was going to remix a piece that I did in undergrad that I just did not do well. Mm-hmm. Like my idea, it was like back then, like my ideas was here, my skills was here, right? So I was like, I'm a little bit smarter. I'm not going to try to duplicate that piece, but I'm just going to try to make a smarter version of it. Plus, I don't know what I did with that. Anyway, so I was looking, so I go over his house. He's got 3 bowling balls. He's going to sell to me. And he's like, you bowl? And I was like, no, I don't bowl. I was like, I'm going to put this thing, I'm going to drill a hole, I'm going to stick it in the wall. I'm telling him what I'm going to do to it. He was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, well, I got some kneelers. You want those? I was like, I don't know what that is. Let me see them. So he brought those. So then on the way home, my son Gabriel and I, we were driving and we were kind of talking back and forth. And then what I landed on was the incident that happened in South Carolina with Dylan Roof. And so I started thinking about that and thinking about it in the broader scope of situations like that where, killings happen, and killings of black folks happen. And, well, Terence, what do you feel about that? What do you think about that? Because I mean, it's not like I wasn't aware of the stuff that's going on, but I just wasn't really asking myself, how I felt about it. So I was all right, I'm going to take this thing out to the range and I'm going to shoot it.
So wait, those are actual bullet holes?
No, well, he's not, because no one was going to let me. I wanted to shoot, like I had a whole, so I had an idea of how I was going to approach it. And then so this gets into the thing about staying empty, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm gonna get a license to firearm. I'm gonna go to a range and that's gonna be a whole thing. I'm gonna film it, I'm gonna shoot it. And I have a friend who's a reverend and he's gonna give a sermon. I'm gonna record that and it's gonna, So that didn't happen, and so Gabriel was helping me. Because I said if I really shoot it, it might tear the whole chair up, And so Gabriel was like, you need to replicate bullet holes. And so he was in the studio, and I was making holes, and I show it to him, and he'd be like, nah, that's not it. And then I had like different pictures of like bullet holes in wood. And so and then he was like, you got to burn it or something. And I go back in the kitchen. I call that area my studio the kitchen, not my actual kitchen. I come back out. He's like, okay, that's starting to look like, okay. The audio, the audio is off. The sound resonates, but basically what the loop is there's a song. Earth, Wind, and Fire did a cover of the song "Where Have All the Flowers Gone," right? Where they so that loops. But then also there's excerpts from the actual memorial service of the slain 9 people from that church. And so it's 9 bullet holes. It's it was a 9mm that was used. The holes are, for that. And so the piece is called 9 Red Roses and 1 Hamburger. Because if you know how the thing went down after. Right. They took him to get a burger after it all went. And so, so it's about that, but it's about more than it. Like that's the jump off, but it's about more than that. Like, so it's the introduction for those who may have not, it's like sort of like the euphemism for a bigger problem. And so, yeah, that's what that piece is really, but again, that happened several years ago. It's just that I didn't really know that it stuck to me like it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like a tick. Like you get a tick and you might not know you have it. Most people, if they get a tick, they don't know, and if it's a tick and you got Lyme disease, well, then you're going to find, you know what I'm saying? You're going to find out, so it's kind of like or trauma. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where like a thing happens and you think, well, I've been like the thing, like I thought the thing with my dad, I thought I was good. I wasn't, when I was 8, I wasn't pining. I didn't think about my dad. My mother told me, when she said that she don't think he's coming back, she said I started hyperventilating. I don't even remember that.
Right.
I don't even remember it. And then it wasn't until I was well into my adulthood when I was talking about it with my therapist, and I sort of like kind of
Yeah.
brushed over it, like, well, no, we had to keep it moving, you know what I'm saying? Me and my mother, it's just us against the world here. He was like, and he like zapped and like hypnotized me. He's like, what happened? And I was like, "Rah!" He's like, yeah, no, you feel a way about that. You felt some way about that, yeah.
And speaking of just kind of your artistic output in general, you from DC, lived in Anacostia, left us to go to Baltimore. No offense to anybody here from Baltimore. But I'm wondering, have you noticed any change in how you approach your art or how you think about art now that you are not kind of immersed in DC and everything that's happened here?
Well, what I've noticed is that one, I'm just, my habit has changed. Like I have a habit that I really like now, where it's just kind of like, I live 5 minutes walking from the train. I still commute to DC to work, and my studio is a 10-minute walk from the train, and a 7-minute walk back to our apartment. So it's a little triangle. So when we first moved, I wasn't thinking about how productive I would be or what the work would look like. All I was concerned about was I was back at Kung Fu. I was like, I just want to create a habit. I want to get off the train, studio, home, train, studio, home. Like that's my habit. I don't care if I don't make anything when I'm, sometimes I would just go to the studio and just sit there. Sometimes I would sweep, and I just believed that the work would come. And then after a while, the work started coming, but it's the habit. I have a habit now. And I simply just couldn't afford a studio space big enough while I was living here. I had my work, I had work in the back of on-floor gallery, like a sweatshop I had going back there at like 2 a.m. down, and then I had another co-working space in Old Town, and I was screen printing in Hyattsville, and so like I might make a piece where I'd have to like screen print this part and then bring it to Anacostia to do this thing and then go over here and cut wood. I was all over the place with like, you know what I mean? So like now I can kind of have everything, consolidate. Yeah, so I can play. You know what I mean? Like I got a playground, I got a space where I can play. And so that's been good. That's been good. But I get homesick. I'm homesick. The thing that trips me out too is that like I get more action in DC now that I'm moving. I'm so happy that this works here, but I'm like, man, in a couple of weeks, I got to get that truck again. Oh, God. That truck, and it's up them flights of stairs. Oh, God.
Well, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but
I'm like, get somebody from Phillips around the corner. Come here and load this thing.
This exhibit is, one of 3. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at some of the other artwork. And I don't know kind of how this show all came about. I know you applied, but do you see the work in here in conversation, or do you see themes between what you've explored here with the work from the other artists?
Well, maybe not as well, kind of with the work I here, but maybe more in terms of just the conversations I've had with the artists. I think more than anything, because I've had a chance to talk to them both, and I like, I'm always interested in what drives people to consistently make a thing, and so to me that's what's fascinating to me about artists in general. Like, as a person that's curated shows, my thing is, no one wakes. Well, I don't know if this is true in every case, but I'm willing to bet that no one really wakes an artist up and say, all right, come on now, time to go in there and, get inspired and do the thing. Like, so what is it? Like, what is it that drives you? So I'm interested in what drives people. I mean, not just on BW Parkway, but like, in this kind of like, what is it that makes you keep doing this thing? Like, like if you weren't getting, if your stuff wasn't, flying off the walls into every collector's home and stuff like that, like, why are you cluttering up your space with these things, these objects that you, like, what drives you to do it? So I've got a little bit of that from just talking to the other artists, and it's also, again, it's like, kind of wind in my sails, because it can get lonely. It can get lonely in that space. You know, last couple weeks ago when it was like north of 95 degrees, 100 degrees, I don't have an AC in my studio, and it's like,
I don't want to do
go
this
upstairs,
today.
man, and heat, God, and I mean, sometimes, maybe I'm in there in my underwear. I'm just saying, maybe I might just have socks and underwear on in there, just like I got to make this happen, and then come on home and appreciate the AC, and it's like, they like, boy, you look like you just walked here from DC.
Let's see, let's check time. How are we doing? Okay, I have one final question, and then I'll open it up if you guys have any questions you want to ask him. So what do you want people to get from your artwork? Whether it's this exhibit or if they encounter you at another Smithsonian show or wherever.
So, well, there were bands that I heard. I went to see Queens of the Stone Age and Stone Temple Pilots, and I forget the other band, one night. And when I was playing around with the idea that I wanted to start a band, and when I saw them, I was like, I'm starting a band. And I couldn't play an instrument at the time. I could, like, that never stops me from, like, not being able to do something when I want to do it, like not having a skill, that rarely ever stops me from, so I was like, get me a guitar, got a guitar, and I started recording some songs, and my bass player, who's a real, and plus I know music, I'm around good musicians, and I played it for Ezra, and Ezra says, that sounds okay, what key is that in? I was like, I don't know, I don't even know how, it's not even tuned, the guitar wasn't tuned, but I was inspired by these, you know what I mean, or when I would see Martin Puryear's work or Mel Chin's work, and I would look at their work and say, or like one time we were installing Sonia Clark's work at the Women's Museum, and I'd look at that stuff and I'd run to the studio and start working. So I guess inspiration, right? And so what I hope is that for people who may, for artists, who may be not, maybe not wanting to take that step, or maybe taking that step but not sure, like maybe I could be for them what people had me were for me. Like I just, I like this whole, like as far as time goes anyway, as far as like this kind of like, as far as I guess was that linear time, as far as linear time goes anyway, like the dots on the line of history of things that happen, like, it would be cool to have an impact on, like, like that pond ripple like that. It'll, I saw this piece at Hillyer, and it sparked me to do this thing, like, you can hope for that, you can, I mean, I know when I go to Kung Fu tournaments now, I want to compete, but I'm a judge, I don't compete anymore. But a guy came to me and he was like, he says, I'm competing like this every year because of you. Because I used to, I guess he was in there, like we were competitors. And when he was like, I'm competing because I saw you compete, right? And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. And then I'd sort of say to myself, like, y'all lucky that I'm not competing now because I wipe all you dudes up, I brought my uniform with me. I was like, why? You're not gonna, it's upstairs and no one cares. They don't care. You're a judge, you know what I mean? But he said, or look at the young, I was watching the young kids, doing Kung Fu, and it's like they got that fire, and I'm like, man, like they're inspired, yeah. You know what I mean? So like, I guess that's really cool to be inspired by. I think it's great, especially with the way things happen to be right now. I think it's great to be inspired to do something that's healing, or, at least, you know what I mean? Like, to do something that's like, that can kind of, I mean, art, I think art is spiritual, honestly, whatever that means to whoever, you know. So anyway, that's kind of like my story. Yeah, well, I mean, to me, that piece is. I've been in it, and actually, I found out something after I made that piece. Like last week, I found out about this thing called a Boyart void. That's you got Milky Way, then you got Andromeda, and then you got further out, and then you got these voids where there's just aren't as many galaxies in a cluster, so they look like big voids, right? I didn't find out until I finished this piece. But so one thing that piece to me is about like this idea of portals. Where were we before we got here? Where are we going after we leave here, kind of thing. Okay. And then I'm starting to go down this road with those Dogon people who are the Dogon tribe is you know, they know stuff. They know stuff before stuff was even stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm still like actively like what's them and then as far as like the markings. So it's important that I don't have any music playing. It's important that it's quiet when I'm doing that because for me it's important because then it starts to be about sound too. As I'm making marks, it's sounds of marks. It's phrases, it's like repetition, it's like stream of consciousness. It's like, well, why is it if I make one shape, why is it doesn't it feel complete unless there's this other mark next to it? Or why is it that, you know, I have to, you know, why is this recurring mark? I'm not looking for significance in a sense of communication. Like I'm looking for significance in terms of why do I do that? Like why is it that what is that rhythm about, you know? Why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? That's another story. But so that piece was really just about like, you know, I was working on smaller things and I said I'm gonna just kind of like make something bigger to just kind of walk down this road some more. Like where am I going? So I still don't know, but one thing I did come away with is just that like this idea of because that piece is sort of tied with Gabriel's piece, the Good Knower, about because I really am fascinated with my son, and I was really more especially fascinated when he was around 2 and 3 years old, because some of the things he would say, and I was like, this dude, he done been somewhere. Where where has he been? You know.
That's why you call him Brain.
That's why I call him Brain, right? so yeah, so like that's really what that, you know, meant for me at the time I made it. Well, it started with one mark, and then I just, you know, I would do something and I'd leave. I didn't want to drag the process out long, like take a bunch of weeks to do just like the bigger parts. I wanted to kind of try to keep working sessions where I could get, because I wanted to kind of at least kind of be in the same kind of, I mean, you're never going to be the same mind space every day, but just, you know, like kind of just in terms of like, I'm following something and it's not my hand, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so I'm trying to like stay following it without that, you know, stay on it, whatever it is, stay on its tracks without the tracks getting cold. The choice of paint, I wanted like the blackest black paint to make these spaces. When it was all covered up, before I put the like portal shapes on it, I really tried to give that a lot of forethought. It was really a really right brain kind of thing. I just kind of was like, I want what the next moves I make to start feeling right, because just because it's a big canvas don't mean I need to go crazy on it. Like any crazier than it already was getting, you know. So, and like there's little flecks of color in some of those portals. Yeah, they were way bigger than that at first. They were really bigger, much bigger. Because sometimes you don't, I guess, need to know read the whole book to know the story. Sometimes, like how musicians can do sometimes with chords or something like that. They may suggest and, you know, Bill Graham was good with that, with these ghost notes. He'd play ghost. If you listen to a lot of old Sly and the Family Stone stuff, he'd play notes, and you think you heard one note, but you did, but there'd be another note. There's a song called "Thank You Africa." That's a perfect example of what ghost notes are. He'd play a note, right? And he's only playing like 2 notes. Boom, burnt, boom, burnt, boom, burnt. But if you listen, he's touching another open string, but you can feel it more than you can hear it. So my wife wrote a poem called "A Letter to the Gentry," and she was living on Longfellow Street, and she was watching how the gentrification process was taking place on Kennedy Street, which was really aggressive. And throughout different parts of town, the redevelopment had different like strategies. And Anacostia was a little more presented like it was a little more benevolent, but it was gangster. It was really pretty gangster, you know. And so the idea is, then I hadn't been to Harlem in a long time, right? I was in Harlem in the late '90s, and then I went again in 2010. I was surprised, right? In 2012 or something like that, they used to do these things on Vines. Like the Vines was like a little 6-minute video, right? Mm-hmm. So they used to do these things, and they were and where like everybody would be in the room. Right, 1 minute, and then the next minute they'd be just going all crazy, and they'd be like, "It's called the Harlem Shake," and that bugged me so much because I was like, "That's not the Harlem Shake. The Harlem Shake is a cultural, really is a jewel, right? There's a particular dance, but like if you Google like original Harlem Shake, and you'll see what I mean. And so to me, looking at what had happened in Harlem physically with the development. And those little clips about how they bastardized this dance was like, so that's why the piece is called Reflections on a Letter to the Gentry or the Harlem Shake, right? Because that's what happens with the neighborhoods. This was during a time where I was like really playing with symbolisms and stuff like that. I had like a whole library of different shapes to mean different things. And so this knife with the measuring things that's developers. Right, because like the Department of Planning, I used to think that meant like, well, they would get together and be like, okay, so next month we're gonna do this. No, they'll be like, in 20 years, this area right here, yeah, them people not gonna live there no more. All right, so and then this and this window I had for another piece, but I brought it to my studio, and I was trying to figure out how to resolve this pilgrim's hat, and I was like, well, the window's the buckle, right, And so it's like, so I'm sort of, I guess, couching this in the age-old, story of Thanksgiving, but it really didn't go down like that. So the good knower. So when Gabriel was 4, he and I were making snowballs, and. He was making a snowball, and he said, "Hey, Daddy, you remember when I was in Mommy's stomach and the man said, 'I'm going to shoot you'?" And I was like, "That's really abstract." And I thought about it, and I asked him to repeat it. And he repeated it just like he said it before. And so I was thinking about it, and we still throw snowballs and stuff. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, right. When Sarah was 9 months pregnant, we used to stay up at night and watch reruns of The Sopranos. We used to be watching The Sopranos like every night. And I was like, But I didn't say anything. I didn't tell him that. I just said, how could you know that? And he never even looked up at me. He said, because I'm a good knower. And I was like, oh my God. He's been one of those that I've just kind of like, I give an extra ear to my son when he says things. There's things, his frontal lobe isn't all the way to, he still, eats all the cereal in the house and the stuff he does, But then there's other times where he'll say something and something that says, listen to that, like listen to what he just said. So that's really, that's really kind of what is playful in that way. It's sort of one of the more playful pieces, but that's really what kind of, it's really kind of my song for my boy. That's really what it is.
That's lovely. And I think we are at time, and what a great way to end. That was beautiful. And for those of you who don't know, Gabriel is awesome. He's so smart, so talented. You know, just watching him grow into kind of his artistry and to seeing how you've influenced him and you two have influenced each other. It's it's lovely. So I think that that's a perfect way for us to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much. And this runs to the 31st, right?
Yeah, the 31st. Yeah,
Yep, the 31st.
Thank you guys so much.